Good evening, Happy New Year, and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman in for Richard French, and tonight we continue our RFL New Year's tradition. On New Year's Eve, we look back at the year that was. We hope you enjoyed that broadcast last night. Tonight on New Year's Day, we look ahead at the year now just underway, and we begin in Washington, where all eyes weren't on the ball dropping in Times Square last night, but rather on the Speaker's gavel in the House of Representatives, which on Thursday will be dropped by a Democrat, likely to be Nancy Pelosi. That could turn out to be the biggest political story of the new year, that and the Mueller probe, and they could be somewhat interconnected, as Democrats will have subpoena power once they run all of the House's committees. And that may be just part of the mandate that Democrats received from voters last November in a midterm often referred to as a blue wave, but in reality felt more like a Democratic landslide. Democrats earned about 60 million votes in the midterms. That's better than 53% of the popular vote. Republicans checked in at just 45%. That's an 8-point gap. Turnout was huge. 49% of eligible voters cast 116 million votes, numbers we have not seen for a midterm in decades. And the result? Democrats won 40 seats in the House and gained control of the chamber, but Republicans expanded their majority in the Senate, netting a 3-seat gain. One more result, 114 women were elected to the 2 chambers of Congress. That's an all-time high, but it's still just 21% of all elected lawmakers. And our region will be the tip of the spear for the Democrats. 4 New York Democrats will take the reins of key committees. Nita Lowey will chair appropriations. That's the power of the purse. Eliot Engel will run foreign affairs with Syria, Russia, Afghanistan, and lots of other hot spots all over the headlines. Jerry Nadler gets judiciary, where any push for impeachment or censure would begin. New Jersey's Frank Pallone will run energy and commerce with an oversight on a range of key issues. And beyond our region, Adam Schiff takes over House Intelligence, which was investigating Trump and Russia badly under Republican control. And Maxine Waters takes over Financial Services. Any of those chairpeople in any of those committees could cause big headaches for this White House. But Democrats could face headaches of their own. A wave of young progressive Democrats were elected this fall. Queens' Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the best known among them. If they push the caucus too far to the left, it could leave the new majority limping and hurt the party as it prepares for the 2020 presidential election. So what will Democrats do? Govern or just obstruct? Just what can they do with that new majority, and will they overstep and do damage in the process? To answer those questions, we've got a great New Year's Day panel. We're joined by Phil Reisman. He is a columnist and radio talk show host. Jericho Richardson is a former spokesperson for Preet Bharara and Mayor Bill de Blasio. Ellis Hennigan is a columnist, political analyst, and author. And Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. And Jericho, I'm going to start with you because for a lot of people are still celebrating, a lot of Democrats still celebrating the big win. Others have a tone of caution going forward. Are you more optimistic or concerned?
Oh, definitely more optimistic. I think it's great that Pelosi's back in power. I think you need a seasoned veteran to be able to really move the Congress in the direction that it needs to go. And I'm also energized by some of the young folks that have joined that collective, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I think is energizing the party. And I think it's going to push the party in a positive direction. I don't necessarily think it's going to pull the party apart. I think there are a lot of folks that have just been sitting in the center and not making decisions in ways that are important for the party to move forward. And I think she's going to drag folks along.
Well, let's get into that a little bit, Phil. Is that part of the Democrats' big tent and healthy for the party, or is it a potential source of friction and could be difficult?
We'll find out. I mean, I don't know. But
well, thanks for that.
Yeah,
thanks for tuning in.
No, well, you want me to put my Karnak hat on? I mean,
well, this is the look ahead, so yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to see continuing gridlock in Congress, and whether or not the Democrats get along is probably it's a huge issue for them going forward in terms of who ultimately gets selected to run for president. But I think that if you have a certain point of view about or mistrust for the Republicans, this is good news for you because they will be able to block some of the things that we suspected the Republicans might try to do, which was suddenly act like, hey, we have a huge deficit problem, even though we just passed this big tax bill, and we're going to have to do something about it, like cut entitlements. And what you're going to see is, I think, on the Democratic side, is some very positive efforts, and I doubt they'll be successful in an atmosphere like this, but along the lines of things like saving Social Security and actually saving it, and other issues that pertain to things that aren't happening today or next week, but 10 years down the line. You know, things like that. You know, how do you shore up a system like that, which increasingly more and more Americans are depending on?
But Dominic, can Congress get anything done as currently constituted with a division in power and a presidential election just around the corner?
Why should this new year be any different than all the past couple of years?
Everybody. It's been
so to answer your question specifically, no. But we're finally going to see an objective view on the investigation into President Trump. Let's be honest. Republicans had the House and the Senate prior, and so it was not objective. It was done in a way to put the president in the best light. The key thing that Democrats have to be careful of, you don't have the votes in the Senate, so don't push impeachment. My prediction, they will ultimately get the president's tax return, which has been a big issue, unless that goes to the Supreme Court.
You know, Ellis, it's interesting because I think that that power of investigation and subpoena that the Democrats have will probably be the strongest tool in their toolbox now that they have the majority. Will people at home notice the difference in how the Republicans led those investigations versus how the Democrats led those investigations? And is there a price to pay for seeming to be, I don't know, burrowing too deep into this guy?
Oh. People will notice. There will be no confusion about that difference. But if the underlying question is, can the Dems screw this up? The answer is absolutely they can screw this up.
Democrats are known for always finding ways to screw
You're
things
right.
up.
There's some history there. But there's also some challenges, right? You've got a progressive wing in the party that wants to go full bore aggressively against the president. There's a real taste for that. On the other hand, the Democratic Party, when it holds the majority, includes a lot of people with a lot of different views. The kind of Dems you mentioned that last night, the kind of Dems who have won in the middle parts of the country, very different from the folks in the coasts and that progressive wing. How do you unite that behind a consistent philosophy? Nancy Pelosi's got her work cut out for her.
Yeah, she's got to make sure that they don't jump the gun on this. I mean, they cannot. You know, first of all, did you mention I don't know if you mentioned the Judiciary Committee is headed up by Gerald Nadler.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal. But you know, the bottom line is there's something like 6 or 7 investigations going on already.
17.
17 investigations?
17
okay, well, there's 6 or 7 big ones.
Yeah.
And the biggest one is Mueller's. And that's the one that matters. It's all about Russian collusion, and that's the bottom line. And I don't think these guys, whether they have subpoena power or whatever, they're not going to move fast enough.
And we're going to talk more about Mueller and the impact of that in our next segment. But you know, I do wonder if, because we're already starting to see the president talking about, well, what is he calling it? Harassment, presidential harassment is how they're trying to frame it. I mean, there is a point at which people will blanch on the idea. And, you know, I'm sure Republicans, Dominic, going into the impeachment of Bill Clinton in 1998 thought, we can't lose. We got him. He lied under oath. Look, I mean, and it blew up in their faces. There is a limit to how much people will go. As
been articulated by all 4 Democrats on the panel tonight, Andrew, and Happy New Year, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Happy New Year.
Democrats have to tread carefully. You've got the president on the ropes, but you can't not be super aggressive. And I'm going to be frank and honest. You cannot let that progressive wing that you just referred to, Ellis, you can't let those folks dominate what you're doing as an entire caucus.
Well, the Democrats can't legislate anything. I mean, they have one chamber of Congress. They have the House. So it's not like the Democratic agenda or the progressive agenda, Jerica, is going to be signed into law at any point. So, you know, does that leave Democrats in a bit of a box here? All they can do is go after the president.
I don't know if all they can do is go after the president. I think it's really important when I talked about strong leadership and having Nancy Pelosi, who's been around and a veteran, she's seen what happened back 20 years ago. And she knows how it could go, how much it could bite you if you're a Democrat, if you go too far. So I think there's going to be very measured leadership. I don't think there's going to be any move towards impeachment. I think they're going to be slowly trying to work on legislation, bipartisan legislation that's going to move the country forward. Look at the criminal justice reform bill. That's passing.
It is. The last 2 speakers of the House, both Republicans, Paul Ryan and John Boehner, sort of fell victims to their own caucuses. They could not control the competing interests between the moderate Republicans and the Freedom Caucus and that group. And that's what did both of them in. Ellis, can Nancy Pelosi escape that same fate? among Democrats?
I think that she can, but it involves not just doing those investigations, but finding causes around which not just Democrats in her caucus can rally, but that most Americans, come up with a health plan that people feel good about, right? Talk about a tax policy that makes sure that those folks at the very top are at least paying part of their share. I mean, there are these issues out there that, if articulated correctly, boy, can be a huge boon to Democrats, and that really is her prime responsibility.
And even if they can't pass them into law, just
Doesn't
making
matter.
the argument.
You know what?
claim.
We're here. It's what Newt Gingrich did, honestly, in the Contract for America. He found what he referred to as 70% issues, ways that you can articulate stuff that 70% of Americans are going to agree with you. That's the future.
It's amazing how many times Newt Gingrich and the Republican majority in the 90s is going to pop up in conversation, whether it's the impeachment or whether it's the Contract for America. It's fascinating. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, will 2019 be the year of Bob Mueller? The Russia probe probably going to wrap up. It could be the biggest news story of 2019 and maybe the entire Trump presidency, however long it lasts.